Alright, so last week I did a video talking about how some supplementary material, specifically this bingo card, released in conjunction with the Battle of Heart and Mind special, seemed to suggest that in the special, Steven was supposed to use a definitive new power, one that we had never seen before. In that video, I gave my thoughts on what that power might be and gave evidence refuting other possible candidates. I had an idea that I didn't see a lot of people talking about, and so I wanted to talk about it. That's what this channel's about. That said, in the comments of that video, a lot of you guys brought up that they thought that the new power that Steven had used in the special had something to do with him bringing the gems out of their gemstones via fusion, when apparently they weren't done cooking yet. And I want to preface this by saying that I'm not trying to call anybody out, I'm not being petty, I'm not making this video with any malicious intent whatsoever. I just really don't feel like that's the case, and since I didn't clarify in last week's video why I don't think that's the case, I figured I need to get it out there why I think that way. Because honestly, when I put that video together, the idea that pulling the gems out of their gemstones via fusion was a new power didn't even cross my mind. In my mind, it was just fusion. A new way of using fusion, obviously, but not anything other than the same exact type of fusion that we have seen so far. It's become very clear at this point that there are ways to use gem abilities that we haven't seen yet. Just like how Pink Diamond was, through the use of shapeshifting, able to rotate her gemstone to appear more like a quartz. And yeah, I know I'm probably sounding like kind of a hypocrite here, because I did bitch a lot about that back when it happened. But I only really got upset about that specific example because it had been so heavily implied that that wasn't the case, even by statements that the crew had made elsewhere, other than in the show. End of the day though, I wasn't mad that we were shown that gems can rotate their gemstones. I was mad that it was applied in the way that it was, as a means of trying to trick us. The whole Pink Diamond reveal still comes across as something that the crew hinted way too hard and then decided to draw out way longer than they originally planned, and so they had to borderline lie to their fans to keep the deception going. Like, sorry for the brief aside in the middle of an entirely unrelated video, but I want to make it absolutely clear why that bothered me and this doesn't. Because at the end of the day, based on everything that we know about fusion, this is entirely possible without it being a new ability. And despite what some people are saying, the statement that Smokey makes, I think, from Amethyst's perspective, that Steven did something clever by pulling Amethyst out of her gem in this manner, is not some admission on the part of the show that this is a new ability that had never been seen before. In fact, the way that Smokey says that seems to suggest that it's the kind of thing that Amethyst feels that she should have or could have thought of.
Steven, you beautiful genius. You pulled Amethyst out of her gem through fusion?
So, in order to prove this point, let's go over what we know about fusion. Well, we know that fusion allows two gems to merge their physical forms together to create a third gem, which has aspects of both, but which is something more. We know that the personification of all three of those beings exist in a sort of headspace together, and we know that gems have to be of a like mind in order to fuse. They have to be in some way synchronized with one another. No, there does not have to be consent given to fuse. That's a misconception. The gems just have to be on sort of the same wavelength. That's how Jasper was able to fuse with the corrupted quartz, who in turn corrupted her. And dancing is not required. Dancing is just a convenient way for two gems who aren't of a like mind in that moment to find a different way to synchronize with each other. But we see definitively that fusion actually happens a lot faster and a lot more easily when it is performed by two gems that are of a like mind. We see that definitively when Steven and Amethyst fuse for the first time. All they do is come in contact with each other, and suddenly their bodies are combined together. The only difference between that and what we saw in Change Your Mind is that in Earthlings, Amethyst was emerged from her gem at the time. And if Steven really had used fusion to force them to emerge before they were technically ready to emerge, like some people seem to think, I would agree that this wouldn't be possible. Let's say he had tried this trick back when we first saw Pearl reform for the first time in the series, back when she was poofed during that whole incident. If Steven had tried to do this, if Steven, with all of the same knowledge and skills that he has now, had tried this back then, it would not have worked. I know that 100% because until the moment that Pearl emerged from her gem, she was not ready to emerge from her gem. She had not decided on her new look yet, and therefore she had not tried to initiate whichever process is used to reform her body. We know, though, because the crystal gems came out of their fusions with Steven in new forms, that every single one of them was ready to reform at the time that Steven fused with them. They were not being held back by not being ready. They were being held back by whatever Yellow Diamond did to them with her attack.
They'll be out for a good while. They took a direct hit from me.
And seeing how Steven is a being who is, if not immune to the effect of that destabilization field, he is very resistant to it, it makes sense that fusing with Steven might, for lack of a better term, dispel that effect. And as for the gems being of a like mind with Steven in that moment, they obviously were. If they were being held back from reforming, then obviously they wanted to reform. And very obviously, because he told us by telling them, Steven also wanted them to reform. Just because they reformed as the fusion was happening and their bodies merged directly with his does not mean that this is something different than fusion. Maybe it is. Maybe the crew will decide in the future to spin it such that it is, but I see no evidence that that's the case, at least not yet. After all, we know for a fact that gems can fuse before their bodies are fully formed. We saw that the first time that Alexandrite defused. Right here, we see that Ruby and Sapphire begin to reform into Ruby and Sapphire, but then refuse before their bodies have even recreated themselves. This is not one-to-one analogous to what Steven did, but it's pretty darn similar, and I think shows that it's possible. And so there we are. I wanted to clarify my position on this, and that's what I did, so I don't really have anything else to say. In fact, I threw this together pretty fast, so I don't even really have a closing planned or anything. I guess I'll just jump right into the standard fare. What did you guys think of this theory? Is there something I missed, or have I managed to put together something of interest? Let's get a discussion going in the comments section down below, or over at my Discord, link in the description. But either way, this has been AJ22, and I will talk to you guys later.